Hello, everyone. Um, I hope everybody's well, doing good. Well, today we're gonna do some exercises, and then I was thinking we're gonna definitely have time to do a little painting. Maybe I have something interesting for you. We'll do just a single fish. You'll see, very realistic and fun to do. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So get your waters, get your two waters, two small containers of water, paper, watercolors, brush, and don't forget the tissue or napkins or paper towels. I have mine right here. Okay, you see a little edge of it. It's fine. Okay, let's see. So get your paper, and then we'll start some exercises. So to refresh our memory and also to um, let me see if more light will help. You think more light will help? A little more light? How much more light? That's too much. Okay. So I want you to first wet all your paints. And I have this spray here, bottle. But you could also use your brush. Okay, you wet your brush and you go one by one. The problem here is that your brush will get dirty unless you just tap the color, but you still make contact. So if you could just maybe flick the paint. This is why I say it's good to have a droppler, um, water droppler, so you could count the drops you put in on the paint. But like this, eventually the brush will get dirty because it does make some a little eye contact. You see, so be aware of that. Be aware that your uh, um, let's start with some exercises. Try to copy what I do on your paper, on your piece of paper. Okay. Okay. Oh, paper got a little dirty. It's fine. That's where I'll put my line. So first, we're gonna take color, whichever color. I'm gonna take my red. And you see all the paints, mixtures that I done in the past with other projects, I kept them here. and they, even though they're dry, they'll activate with water. Okay, so first we'll do wet on dry. Dried is the paper, wet is the paint, and I'm gonna do a couple of lines. So one, you see, you'll see why I'm doing this in a moment. Two, and the reason why I'm going over twice is to spread that first color that goes in that is a little darker because your brush is richer with color. Look, and as you move, it gets less color. So I go a second time. Well, this is, it has less water here, but you get the idea. So I did three of them. Um, let's do with this same color, wet on dry, but a bigger patch. Look, wet on dry. Here you go. Wet on dry. Now I'm going to take the same color so you can see the difference. Everybody did the three lines and just put paint on the paper because the paper is dry. This is wet on dry. We're doing some exercises. And then with the same color, this time I'm going to wet the paper. You see how the paper is getting wet? And it shines because of this. Where it shines is because it's wet. And now I'm going to put that color, and this is called wet on wet, because I got wet paint on my brush and wet paint, sorry, and wet paper. Okay, it's a lot of color, so, but you see how it's different? Wet on wet is different. This is more diluted, more transparency parts. The paper absorbs, basically the paper absorbs in both circumstances. Here it absorbs the paint that is wet straight up, you know, because the paper is dry. Here the paper is wet and it takes the color paint and it mixes it with that water in the paper that has already been absorbed. So it's a little more, um, it's a little bit more diluted, gentle, transparent. Okay, so wet on dry, wet on wet. Now we're gonna do a flat wash, which is basically just putting color down, very rich, wet. Um, see, I'm adding more color. But you get the idea. And then now I'm gonna grade this. So this is a flat wash because it's the same color all along. Now I'm gonna grade it, and I'm gonna be careful. Grade it meaning from dark to light. So dark is gonna be up here. And I have to be careful as I go down that it does becomes lighter. How do I make it becomes lighter? by just adding water, less color. Okay. Let me bring more dark up here. Practice and do these exercises, please. It will help you. You see how it's grading from dark to light? Okay. So solid going down. Now we're gonna replicate this, and actually, you know what? Let's do 2 lines here, 2 more lines of the same color. But this time, I want you to be careful with the amount of water you put on your brush. So get the paint, dry your brush. You see, let me do this again. I get paint, I dry my brush with the a little bit with the tissue, and I go and I try to make 3 lines right here. That's very wet. Okay, that's very wet. So I'm gonna dry it again. We want to do the effect of dry brush. There you go. Let's do that again because you need some paint in it. It cannot be completely dry. You need some paint. You see, and that's the dry brush. It can be completely dry because then it will not paint. But the paint has to have very little amount of water. And then it will look like this. Okay? Great. Oh yeah, we're going to do this same effect, grading, but instead of going from red to lighter, it's gonna be from red to another color going the other way up. Okay? Or a few colors, if that works. So let's put the red first. Okay. I'm gonna wet the area a little, just a little. We're putting the red. We're grading it, so it has to go down lighter. Then let's put some orange. And you see how it mixes right here? And then now yellow. Let's do yellow, a little bit of yellow. All the way down here. Reach at the end. You see how I clean my brush a little to just get just water? And the water is what's going to help me mix the yellow with the orange to have less yellow and be able to mix these colors here. Okay. So now we have a grading from, let me put more rich yellow right at the end. Just at the end, it's going to be completely rich. You could use the same colors I'm using, or others. You know, it could have gone from blue to green. It could have graded from blue to green. Oops. No, 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 no. I'm picking this up because I didn't want that there. Apologies, I thought that brush. This is why it's good to always have your brush very, very clean. If you don't know how it is, clean it. But it's okay. We saved the situation. I do have to do a little bit of more grading effect. I think it's good. Okay, so wet on dry, wet on wet, flat wash, because it's all solid, graded wash, you see it's going from dark to light, and then variegated wash, which goes from one color to the other. There's a lot of things you can do. You know, you could paint with your fingers, you could paint with a like a little palette. Okay, let's try another color, maybe blue. I'm gonna get my blue. And it has a little bit of purple. You just cut a little bit of purple. It's okay. But I'm gonna do a grade effect right above these lines. I'm gonna make 2 lines. So one. It's pretty wet, very light. And I want to make a darker one, meaning, oops, meaning more color. Darker, I meant more, a little bit more opaque color in it, in the line. That's gonna go over the 3 red lines. Okay. Let's see, it's a little darker. But you can see how you can still see the red under it. All right. Now I'm gonna do a mixture of colors. This is not really entirely mixed. We put the orange in the middle. And yellow and red, sorry, yeah, exactly. Yellow and red makes orange. So I put the orange right in the middle, and it shows the grading more softer, gentle. But now we're going to mix colors in a wet on wet. So I'm going to wet the paper, and I'm going to put 2 or 3 colors and let them mix in there. Okay, so for this, you see, we have dark, dirty water where I've been cleaning my brush, and we're trying to keep another one as clean as possible, as long as we can, to when we wet the paper. So look how I'm wetting the paper a lot. Don't be afraid about this step. When I ask students to wet their paper, they're hesitant or don't wet enough. The paper will take it. That's what it's made for. And will start absorbing. So that's pretty well wet. I'm going to put blue. I already have blue on my brush. Some blue. You see how it mixed with the water? You see that? If it's too light because it has too much water, add more blue in some areas. In some areas, the areas you wish. You see how it spreads? I'm going to do a shot of that effect just very closely here, but I have to clean. Well, you know what? I'll use another brush. For another color, yellow. Let's put yellow somewhere here too. See what happens. It should make green in some areas, right? I'm not letting it mix entirely. Oops. But I'm going to use a third color. Why don't we put orange? In the areas that I left white. Sorry, that I let the paper be. See, this is very wet here. Oops. And it mixes all the colors. It's going to take a while for that to dry. Okay. So with that same orange, watch how I'm going to wet the paper here. And I'm going to do that effect just with one single color because I love seeing it and to really show you what happens. With the orange, let's see. Orange was not a great example, but yeah, I'm gonna pick up some of this excess here because then all the colors are gonna start mixing right there, and then it gets dirty because it's no longer the color; it's just wherever the color goes to stop because the paper is bent and it's collecting here because the paper is bent and the water tends to run that way. Okay, that's why you're not seeing that the paper is bent. But okay, so yeah, experiment too. So I did a little bit of experimentation here. Try to clean my brushes. What else can we do? We could do a forest and trees. Okay. Oh, we could do splatter. So we could take paint. And see what happens if we flick the brush hairs. I'm gonna keep it in this angle maybe. See that splattering is very thin. But you could get it bigger if you put more water. Okay, splatter right here. To create maybe stars in the sky with white paint. Well, I have told you it's very hard to watercolor white to be opaque, but you could get acrylic, a little tube of acrylic to carry with you, and then when you paint the sky dark with purple or black or some opaque dark color, you use the acrylic white paint to flick and make stars. If you use white watercolor, um, it's too transparent. It will not stick out as like really white, if that makes sense. Experiment and you will see this. A lot of the things I say um, will make sense to some of you who have already experienced it or are familiar with watercolor, but it will not make sense until you do it. So a lot of watercolor learning comes with just doing it. You and any art actually, you have to just do it. You have to do it. You want to get better at writing, you have to write. You have to read. You want to get better at cooking, you have to cook. So um, yeah, a lot of the things I say, especially about lighter tones, colors, and dark tones, colors, um, you will experience it painting. You will put colors and then you try to put a lighter color on top, and you're like, why can I cannot see that color. I see something, but I don't see the brightness of the light color. Well, that's because there's something on there already, some darker color. You have to save those lights or the paper and put the blacks at the end carefully to let those whites still show up. And that comes with experience. Okay. Um, and then you don't get maybe something right as you want, but then you get the next piece of paper and move on and do another one and try it again. And, a lot of artists are known for a, a theme, landscapes, or another artist may be known for portraits, another artist may be known for boats, another artist may be known because they're really good at painting flowers, or they only do flowers. So when it comes to watercolors, that's very that happens a lot. That happens a lot. An artist becomes good at something in watercolor. Cityscapes with like rain and people walking around is very common. Flowers, you know. So I say that um, to say that they do it over and over and over and over, and that's what makes them get good at it. So then you see one flower, and that they didn't just do that one flower. They've done maybe 20 of them, and then you're looking at the the one they consider their best. Does that make sense? Rather than an artist that just did one flower. No, that's what they are known for because they do that subject a lot. Okay. You could use the rest of the space to practice and do lots of mixtures and things like that. I'm going to take the time to write in blue markers what these things are. So this is dry, wet on dry. This is wet on wet. This one here will be flat wash. This one here is called graded wash. I'm going to write it up here so the lightness ends up with the paper, not my writing. And this one that changed from color to color slowly, it's gonna be smooth and slowly. Variegated wash. And these are things we're constantly doing when we do watercolor. This here obviously is splatter, you know. This one here is obviously down here, the dry brush. This one here, one on top of the other, is glazing. And this one here we're gonna call blending, sorry, bleeding, or because one color bleeds to the other, so bleeding. And we're mixing colors too. But I'll leave it like at that, okay? This is still wet on, this is also wet on wet. Again. I'm gonna write again. And a little arrow too. Cool. Does that make sense? You could cut the paper if, you know, but keep experimenting around here. Do some of the things again, you know, a couple of times. Maybe you want to do them a couple of times. Is that good? You all have your color wheel. If not, pause the video, look at it and replicate it. The brown comes out of mixing the three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. If you mix them and you keep an eye on it and mix them well, you know, it doesn't have to be all equal. Maybe you need a little more red. And you're gonna need more water to get the color to really show the brown. But get the brown. Pause the video and write what each color is. Let me actually underline here. The primary colors, secondary colors, and complementary colors. Yeah, pause it and recreate this. That's another exercise you could spend half hour with. We just did this. Now let's spend time making a small painting. Let's have fun with what we learned. Okay. I got a smaller piece of paper. Half of this, you know, just half of it. Trust me. You see how it's half? The other half. You could cut the paper in two, and then you get one half for your color wheel and one half for the painting we're just gonna do. So we're gonna do a fish, I said. In this case, we're gonna play around with what we know already is complementary colors. The water obviously is blue. Complementary to that will be orange. So we're gonna do an orange fish in the water. Let me change my waters. Give me 1 second and I'll be right back. I'm gonna change my waters. Okay. Let's do this fish as realistic as possible. And for that, we may use our pencil. If you have a pencil around. Remember, a pencil is used in watercolor just for the basic base. Basic. Meaning, if it's necessary, simple sketch. But this fish has big tail and round body, a goldfish basically. It will be a goldfish, okay, an orange goldfish. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna think of our paper and split it in half, two halves, and in the half to the left, we're gonna do an oval. Don't go past the half of the paper, okay? Just over here, and maybe even more to the left than the half. Okay, so if this is the half, I'm gonna draw my oval here. So watch me. It's an egg. And if you notice, I kept on doing circles in the air until I kind of visually got it right, and I did this. So do your oval. You know what? We could do a little more drawing. In this case, there's a lot of detail, and the watercolor will somewhat cover it. So you do your oval, right? You're not gonna close it here in the back. So I'm gonna do the bottom. And it's kind of like a fat, chubby oval, okay? And the top two, round, almost. That's what I mean by almost. And then here, we're gonna do a bump, okay? Like a bump, like a small little bump, like a lemon bump. Okay, you see? That's like a little bump. So let me do this in a piece of paper. We did an oval. Then I made a bump. And here I did not close it. So I stopped like that. Okay. Now, there's 2 points here, 1 point here and 1 point here. Again, you split the oval in half, 1 point here, 1 point here. This will have some fins that are wavy like this, okay? And be subtle with your pencil. You see I did not finish the line. And over here, smaller. It goes back too. So back, you see how it's going back? This is the front, back, and this goes back too. And the top is like a mohawk, like it's gonna go up like this. Okay. This is the fin. This is all the, you get that? So I made a wave up here like that, and this like this, and it looks like fire flames, fire flames. Let's put the let's do the eye of our fish. So the eye is gonna be right where that bump was. Right here, we're gonna rest it. And then we're gonna do an opposite letter C. If the letter C is like this, we're gonna do it the other way. Right around here. So this basically marks, these are the gills. This is the gill. And the eye. And don't do the mouth, don't worry. But you could do some smaller backwards letter C's like this. Look, scaffold, and those are scales, you know. But don't do too many. Just a few right here. Because remember, we're using the pencil, so be subtle. And I want you to think on the eye when we paint it. We're gonna put a dark color in the eye, maybe purple or black, maybe even black. But if it's black, it will be the only thing black in the whole painting. But I want you to be aware when you paint this eye that you're gonna leave a little small spot white. Meaning that if I have a circle for the eye and I fill it in, I'm gonna leave anywhere, maybe up here or here, but leave a gap, maybe make sure to leave a spot that is white. Okay, so when you fill the eyeball later on with the paint, I'm going ahead of myself. We're gonna leave this gap here, you see? You see how there's like a gap here? That's very important because that gives us the highlight in the eye, the reflection of light outside. We all get that. When you look at somebody's eyes, you're going to see the reflection of the light source, the sun or a lamp or whatever light is in front of you. It's basically like a mirror, and there's got to be some source of light to be able to see it. If you have two lights in front of you, you're going to see both of them. But just to simplify things, one highlight is enough. They use this in cartoons, in illustrations. It's very important to make the eye look more believable. When we look at a face or an animal, eyes are very important. It's what animates them. It's what makes them organism. Okay. Um, there's been studies done that you could have pencils as characters. A pencil and a brush walking around. Pencil and a brush as friends walking around. And you can get the idea that these two objects now are animated. The moment you add two little dots to them, I don't know if I could do that. I'm showing you here a psychological test, but it has been studied already. The moment you add two dots as if they are characters, this doesn't really, but if they were more believable eyes, you see, then the two friends walking around. Hola, hello, how are you? They just change entirely. They become so completely more animated and believable. So it's those two little eyes. They believe that there's life in them. Um, Great. I put my paper on top of the orange color. Um, let's finish our fish drawing and then start painting. It's gonna be quick. So we got the fish, you see, and then pause. You could always pause the video to get yourself in the um, step that I am. We have to finish with the long tail or long fins in the back, and that's it. And then we'll start painting. So we got the top right. We got the bottom two, one. There's a second one in the back too. So I'm adding like here, and then these two, the eye, the little bump, the big gill to breathe, opposite, like an opposite C, and the smaller opposite letter C's to show scales. Okay. Now the tail is going to be like a on side letter V, wavy. So watch me. It comes from here, and it's all like a letter V on the side. You see that? And I'm going to do two, one on top of the other. So this one is behind here. You see? Basically, you see the letter V? It's one here, right? I have to erase that I just. And then the ones that behind is because there's two, okay? There's two. So behind is this end that you could barely see, and this other end that comes around here, and a tip here, It comes behind this one. All right, let's paint. Let's do the orange. The orange we're gonna do very gentle, okay, very light. So less color, more water, very light. And if we go darker with the orange, it will be all his body just above the top here. Okay, and maybe around the gill. So let's get some water, maybe wet the fish. Not too much. So when that color hits, it hits on wet paper. And let's get our orange color. But be careful not to grab too much color. Okay, you could start maybe on the part that we know we want to put a lot of color, you see? And then spread with water gently. I need more water than that. That's very bright. This orange here is very bright, so be careful with the amount of color you put down, because we want to be very subtle with our fish. You see how subtle that orange now is? I like that. Up here is where it's going to be the darkest orange. We're grading, but you can see how he's on top here, darker. I mean, more dark orange. And now I'm going to go and do this top fin. And I want to make sure that I do lines like this. And I fill them in. Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised how sensitive is the color, or is the orange is very you got to be really careful with this color. Interesting. Just a tip of orange, just a little bit, creates a lot of color. Look at that. Wow. All right, the other fin down here. I'm gonna grab now lots of orange and go back to my top area here. Remember that we said was gonna be the darkest? In some areas, make sure to kind of create some lines, because that's what the fish texture will be. And now I'm gonna go around my gill here. Remember I told you we're gonna go darker around the gill? And the scales. Look, I'm doing the scales with my paint. I'm gonna blend this a little better. Right here, right there. If you see me putting my finger, is to pick up paint. Um, but yeah, if you want to make this even more darker, not darker, more rich color up here, we could add, you see how I'm making lines? You could add a tiny little bit of red. So I'm making lines. Okay, so a little bit of red on that orange will help us dissipate, or emphasize, sorry, the emphasize the top of his body. That is where he could be the most orange, or more darker, whatever that would that mean. Okay, so I'm gonna add that little bit of red, tiny little bit. Wow, it's so rich, you gotta be really careful. Okay, let's see. Okay, I want more. I want more. darkness up here. As the body gets more defined, I feel like I want to define more the fish. Okay. So now we're going to pick up our yellow. Our yellow. Clean your brush. Pause at any point, if you need to get to the point I am. And the yellow is going to go between these scales, this part of the body, the bottom, and this yellow becomes orangey just because it's next to all of these other colors. Look, goldfish, right? So put yellow here at the ends, in the body there. Put yellow maybe up here, watch me, up here between these lines we created. You see, rather than filling the whole thing yellow, you see how I put it between and becomes more richer? And rather than filling the whole tail here, just in areas, in lines areas towards the end. My brush is almost dry because I'm being really careful of the amount of color I put in. I still feel I want to emphasize the lines that are here in the beginning of the tail, right? I'll show you. I'm gonna grab richer orange and red because I want more defined lines right here. There you go. Yeah, when you see me using my finger, is to subtly mix colors. Sorry, pick up paint. Pick up paint or color or water. Okay? The lines are very important and interesting. Okay, these lines I'm doing now in his tail. And I'm going to go back and define again the scales a little more. And the gill. And now to finalize, we're going to do his eye. Remember, make sure that the eye does have a little white spot left of the paper. Or so now I'm going to pick up my purple. I don't want to use black, but purple. Get a lot of paint. I'm sorry, rich opaque, and go around on the circle of the eye, making sure carefully that I do leave that little point of highlight. You see how there's a little dot? That little dot is very important. I put a tiny little bit of purple over here towards his end of this body, but you got to be really careful. I think that's it. Yeah, I could pick that up and erase it, but not that darkness needs to be just like right there. That's fine. Something I'm missing maybe is a little bit of the red or orangey towards his edge here. And that's it. That's our fish. Okay. So I'm going to finalize it with something I have told you to do when we did the lemons. So I'm going to take a brush, get blue, wet, blue, and I'm going to carefully, with water, you see how I grab so much water? Spread this blue. Remember, blue and orange are complementary. Blue and orange are complementary. That's a lot of blue, too close to him, but that's okay. It's okay. If you're very subtle and gentle, grab water to almost touch where the fish is. If you notice, I grab a lot of water and put the blue. And if I have too much blue, then I add water. And spread that water, you don't want to leave it. You see that blue? I'm going to break it apart and spread it. Maybe that's too much in this area. Collect it. Whatever you have a lot, collected. Bring water again to make it subtle. Yep. And then we got our fish. We could have done also his surrounding water world in wet on wet. So if you want, you could do wet. You see how I'm wetting it a lot more? Maybe here too and here too. And now I'm going to put some drops of blue. But you got to be careful. I'm basically doing wet on wet. And because it's wet on wet, this blue is dissipating on all that water very easily. You see, it's different. So I'm going to wet the area. Sorry, wet it. And then drop the blue dot, the blue. But it has to be very wet. So the effect can look like that. And if it's too much, just blend it in, just fade it out, just dissipate it. See, I think there's a lot more that should be here. That's our fish. This was probably very strong red right here, so I could pick it up. I wanted to define that, but maybe not this much. So I'm going to pick it up by wetting it again, this line. And maybe trying to pick it up because it's very strong. Okay. But that's our fish. Sign it at the bottom. You know, some of the techniques we could have done too here is to maybe put tape, paint all around it, take out the tape, and you get the shape without color of whatever the tape shape was. So if it was a square, you're going to get a perfect square. All right. You could have also put paint down and use your finger to pick up in some areas. Maybe, and it will create these little circles. Watch. To create these kind of little bubbles with your finger tips. So that's another technique. Let me do quickly. If I find it. The tape, and then I will finish with that. So if you have tape, you could do this. So look, I have, this is craft paper tape. So it may not be the perfect example, but let's cut a square. You see the tape? This is not a perfect square. This will be better, close to perfect. I'm going to put it here. You see, this is craft paper tape. I put it down. I'm going to paint around it. Is this my blue? I think it is. And now I'm going to pick it up carefully. I should wait for it to dry, okay? We should wait for it to dry. But you get your perfect square because there was a tape there that did not allow the paint to go into the paper. So now we got two more techniques. My fingertips and covering with tape. And you could cut the shape in, you could cut the tape in shapes you want, like hearts, circles, people. You know, you could cut little figures, and then paint around them, and then peel the tape out, and then you have a little figure there. Okay, so we did some techniques, and we did our fish, our goldfish. Complementary colors, orange and blue, with some yellow, obviously, to make it golden. So thank you, as always. If you could wait a little for your paints to dry up before you close them. Perfect. I'll see you all around. Stay safe.